How to stay the course when motivation wanes. I think we can all agree that motivation is not a constant state. It tends to happen in fits and spurts, and it is not a dependable way to create sustainable change. Particularly at the start of the year, in the Western calendar, we think of New Year as a time where we have our resolutions and we feel very motivated to achieve goals or make changes, and that's wonderful. However, if we don't also have a good plan for how we will stay the course when the novelty of the new year and the motivation wanes, it is unlikely that we will stick to our new resolutions. So it feels timely for us to talk about, what do we do when the motivation wanes, and how do we stay the course? And the frame I want to talk about the research in is what I'm going to refer to as the treasure hunter versus the architect. And not to bury the lead, the system that we employ is much more important than the goal that we set. It is important to set the goal, but the system is more important than the goal. The rituals that we can create are more powerful for sustained change than our habits. So the treasure hunter and the architect, we are in essence taught to be treasure hunters. The prevailing wisdom is always about setting a specific actionable goal. That is the treasure hunter's path. Just imagine X marks the spot. That's the goal. Success is determined entirely by reaching that destination. The journey is really just the means to an end, and the end is the acquisition of the treasure. And happiness, in essence, is often deferred in all the stories of treasure hunting until the treasure is found. Once I reach my goal, then I will be happy. Well, there are inherent flaws in this treasure hunter type behavior, or map, if you will. The first is winners and losers have the same goals. Now, I don't prefer that language, winners, losers. However, it's true, goal setting suffers from what is often referred to as survivorship bias. So we see the Olympian with the gold medal, not the thousands of people who had the same goal and failed against it. So the goal itself is not a differentiator. Second, the achievement of a goal, it's a momentary change. So once you've done the thing, often motivation evaporates and you are no longer in the space of action that was so beneficial because you've achieved the goal. So it's a momentary change. If you clean your messy room, it's a temporary fix unless you fix the habits, in essence, the system that created the clutter to begin with. If you don't change the habits, the clutter returns. So in essence, a goal will treat a symptom. The system addresses the cause. 3, the goals restrict your happiness actually. Because we are often in this goals first mentality, it's either or. It's very dualistic, either success or failure. It ignores all of the path to a satisfying and very rewarding life or happiness. And the fourth is that goals are actually at odds with long-term progress because, kind of back to achieving the goal being a momentary change, once the goal is complete, the motivation vanishes. Now, you could create a series of goals over a period of time to achieve a certain thing. And in so doing, you have a consistency of goal achievement, goal achievement. But in still a momentary change or the achievement of one goal, then the motivation evaporates and you have this little bit of like yo-yo. Now that's done. Now where am I going next? I was on high because I completed this thing. Now where am I headed to? So those are the 4 flaws in the treasure hunter's approach, or the treasure hunter's map, if you will. On the flip side, the architect is building a system. So instead of chasing after a single outcome, the architect is focused on the process. They're defining structure that's going to generate value continuously. In essence, falling in love with the process, not the outcome or the product. There are some quotes that are really aligned with this idea of the system, and the suggestions are that if you really want an even better result, don't even set the goal. really just focus on the system. There's another popular quote that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And it's true. So this is a fundamental shift in focus. So the treasure hunter is very goal-oriented, focuses at like a momentary outcome. The purpose is to win or to achieve something. The result is a temporary change, and happiness is, in essence, postponed until the goal is met. The system orientation of the architect shifts such that the focus is not a momentary outcome. It's a continuous process. The purpose is to continue to play the game, to continue to try to achieve. And the result is longer term progress versus just a temporary change. And you can find happiness anytime that system is running. Now, even a wonderful system can fail if it is empty of meaning or it is mindless activity within the system itself. The logical step is often in our systems, we want to make things automatic. We want to turn our good behaviors into habits. But there's a fundamental flaw in the premise of building habits. By definition, a habit is an acquired behavioral pattern that we follow until it's almost involuntary, in essence, becoming an unconscious act. This is what makes habits or routine begin to be challenging. Good habits and bad habits alike, they are sharing the same defining characteristic, which is acting unconsciously. And so, funny enough, you can think of like nail biters, nose pickers, people who interrupt or chew loudly in public. They're shocked often when their behavior is brought to their attention because they're acting unconsciously. So do we really want to make like our most beneficial behaviors, like the substance of our lives, mindless and automated? Of course we don't. Infusing our actions with meaning is really what makes the difference between a habit and a ritual. The goal of a routine is to make a behavior automatic. The goal of a ritual is to make it intentional. So we can think about it like habits and routines focus on the what. They're very process driven. And rituals focus on the why. They're very purpose driven. And the benefit of creating rituals, creating the focus on the why and the purpose-driven action, is it makes really ordinary things extraordinary. And so it tells us really about why we're doing something, which makes the how much more bearable. And we'll go into this in more detail in the actual research that I'll publish into the premium and VIP spaces. If you want to go a little bit deeper, you would be able to check it out there. You literally become what you intentionally repeat. And this is why habits and routine are very powerful. When we transfer the habit and routine into ritual, we actually behave more like the version of ourselves that we want to be. As our behaviors change, our perceived identity changes also. So everything about the process of system and ritual is very powerful in terms of not just attaining goals, but also continuing to evolve. And speaking of evolution, our rituals have to evolve also. So maybe once a month, we go back and we iterate on those rituals. We remove things that are no longer serving us. We adjust, we add based on the current circumstances and what we've learned. And that's the other beauty of having a systems process versus just looking at goal orientation. So that's it. This is where we can transform our thinking about motivation and sustained change and adjust from that treasure hunter to an architect. That's it.